Hello, everyone, and I'm glad you are watching this video because that means you are attending a wonderful Tribe program, which is providing you some quality Jewish education and interesting thought-provoking topics for you to discuss with your friends. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of feeding those that are hungry. And Ha'achlat Re'evim is a very important mitzvah. We have numerous mitzvot, actually, that are designed to make sure that no person goes home hungry. So, how do we do that in Jewish tradition? Well, farmers would have number of requirements when they were farming the land. And keep in mind that for a long time, that was the Jewish people's primary source of income, was from agricultural development. For example, if you are farming a field and you pass by a piece of the field, you cannot go back and harvest that section of the field. You have to leave it for a poor person who could come and pick it up later. You could not harvest the corners of your field as well. They had to be left for a poor person. And if you are gathering up produce into your arms to be placed in a basket and something falls from your hands, that also must be left for the impoverished individual. Additionally, every 7 years, the land would lay fallow, and any poor person, any person at all, could come in and collect from your fields, from your crops. We also know that the Torah requires us to tithe, which is to give 10%, or in the Hebrew word, meiser, because that 10% would go to support the priests and the work in the temple, but there was a separate tithe that would specifically cover the poor people, called Maser Ani, Ani being an impoverished individual. So we see multiple traditions, mitzvot, that demand and obligate us to think about those that are less fortunate than us. You know, in Talmudic times, and even afterwards when the Jewish people were living in strong Jewish communities throughout Europe and other places, the local community would put a tax, an obligatory amount of money that had to be paid from every individual that would go into a communal pot and would then be used and distributed to those that could not afford to provide for themselves and their families. And that was a requirement that was placed upon you. Now, today we also have wonderful organizations that support the needy, and they need to be supported, of course. But sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that the people that benefit from these programs must be absolutely jobless, penniless, and have no opportunities whatsoever. And that is not the case. Oftentimes, it's people that are your friends, schoolmates, classmates, that are struggling to put food on the table and support themselves and their families, and they need assistance. And that's who we're supporting. So I'll tell you a story that I once heard. There was a woman that lived in an apartment building, and this was in Israel. Most of the people in the apartment building were Jewish, and she had always been a generous person, always supported charities and given tzedakah to the best of her ability. In her mind, giving tzedakah was writing a check or giving some cash, and the organization would handle it. She never really came in contact with people that in her mind she thought were in need. Until this story happened. One day on Rosh Hashanah, she experienced a blackout. All the electricity shut off in her home. Luckily, a number of hours later, it popped back on. Well, one of her neighbors came over and asked her if she had room in her fridge to put her food for the rest of the holiday. There has to be the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. And she said, "I'm sorry, I don't have much room in my fridge because it's packed up with everything for the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, but I have some room in my freezer." And the woman said, "No, that's okay," and she politely declined. Well, they celebrated the first night of Rosh Hashanah, and the next day came along, and she was sitting to herself and asking herself, "I wonder what happened to my neighbor. Where did she find the place to store her food?" So she went to ask another neighbor if she had place in her fridge. And sure enough, this woman said, "Yes, I have place in my fridge. And in fact, our neighbor already came to me and I put her stuff in the fridge." She says, "Oh, that's great. That's wonderful." She says, "But I have to tell you, there wasn't much food that was placed there. Just some hard-boiled eggs, a little bit of fish, and that was it. That was it. And a piece of challah for them to make hamotzi. And so they sit there and looking at each other, and they said, well, I mean, this is a family with 6 children. That's not enough to have a meal today. And then tonight, for the second night of Rosh Hashanah, how are these people surviving? And in that moment, as these 2 women were talking with each other, it clicked. And they realized that right there in their building, they had a family in need. Someone that they never thought of as a family in need. They always thought that she was fine. She never outwardly made any demands or requested any assistance. But in reality, her family was struggling just to survive. So together, they quietly went over to the mom and they offered to provide some food for the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. But their lives were forever changed because they realized that there are people in need of food and assistance in our communities, in our schools, right in our neighborhoods. So let's be more thoughtful of that. Let's do everything we can to help our brothers and sisters and anyone that needs assistance. Because if you can't help them deal with their hunger, you can't help them with anything else. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.